Ali Carter doesn't do reckless. She doesn't do tequila-fueled weddings, and she definitely doesn't do tattooed strangers with too many secrets and a jawline that could kill. But when she wakes up married in Vegas to a man she doesn't remember, and a spark she definitely does, Ali has two options: run like hell, or fake it for one more week and walk away with a free honeymoon in Greece. Because this isn't just a whirlwind romance gone wrong, it's a game, and everyone's playing dirty. What started as a drunken mistake becomes something deeper, more dangerous, and maybe something real. But the past has sharp teeth, and the deeper Ali falls, the more she wonders, is this love, or just the calm before the betrayal?
The first thing I remember is the flamingo. Or maybe it was the Elvis impersonator. Honestly, everything after the third tequila shot is a blur of neon lights, rhinestones, and Finn Wilder's stupidly perfect smirk. What I do know is this. I woke up in a hotel suite the size of my apartment building, wearing a white silk dress I definitely don't own, with a diamond ring on my finger and a shirtless, tattooed stranger snoring beside me like this was normal. My name is Ali Carter. I'm a planner, a list maker. I alphabetize my spice rack and color code my calendar. I do not make impulsive life decisions, and I definitely do not get married in Vegas to someone I met less than 24 hours ago. Except, apparently I do. Because the marriage certificate on the nightstand says it's real, and it has my signature in glitter pen. Cue panic spiral. Finn, yes. He told me to call him that as if we've known each other forever. Wakes up with bedhead, zero shame, and a sleepy "hey wife" that makes my stomach do something deeply inappropriate for 9 a.m. on a hangover. While I hyperventilate and mentally draft an apology email to my future self, he's already ordering room service and scrolling through our wedding photos, which horrifyingly are adorable. Like, annoyingly adorable. We're laughing, kissing, holding hands like one of those travel influencer couples that drinks green juice and owns matching luggage. We could get an annulment, I croak. Already Googling divorce lawyers who don't judge. Or Finn says, waggling his eyebrows, we could stay married long enough to win the couples contest downstairs and score a free trip to Greece. I blink. He grins. I should say no. I want to say no, but then he flashes that stupid smirk and adds, come on, Ali, 1 week of fake love. What's the worst that could happen? And that's the exact moment I realize my entire life just got hijacked by a man with six-pack abs and zero regard for consequences, and I might actually be into it. You ever get that feeling that something's too good to be true, but your hormones and hangover are too loud to care? That was me, eating chocolate chip pancakes in a satin robe while my ridiculously hot maybe husband plotted our fake honeymoon and smiled like he didn't have a single secret in his whole gorgeous body. Spoiler, he definitely did. I could feel it, like a low hum under his words, a pause between his jokes. Something about the way he avoided answering certain questions, like where exactly he's from or what he does for a living. Freelance, he said. Which is rich, because so is literally every man who's hiding something. Still, I agreed to go along with the plan. We had to compete in 3 challenges for the Newlywed Paradise giveaway. Yes, that's the real name. And if we win, we get 10 days in Greece at a 5-star honeymoon resort. Finn claims he entered us in the contest last night, which means that even drunk, he was somehow thinking ahead. Red flag or really good memory? TBD. We meet the event coordinator in the hotel lobby, a woman in a pink blazer with a clipboard and way too much teeth. And I'm suddenly being interviewed on how we met, what our first date was like, and who said I love you first. I say him, he says, her, and the clipboard lady melts. Finn just grins like he's won something, and maybe he has. Later, in the elevator, when it's just us and the silence, I ask him point blank, who are you, really? He leans close, that devil smile back, and says, don't worry, Ali. I'm not dangerous. Unless you want me to be. It's a joke, a flirt. But the way he says it, it doesn't feel funny. It feels like a warning. And here's the worst part. I'm still staring at his mouth, like it's the last dessert at the buffet. I should be running. Instead, I'm wondering how long until he kisses me again. I've made some bad decisions in my life, sure. But this one, it might be the hottest. The first challenge of the Newlywed Paradise giveaway was called Chemistry Under the Sun, which frankly sounded like a steamy beach read and was exactly as awkward as it sounds. We were supposed to lounge by the pool, answer intimate compatibility questions on camera, and engage in casual, natural displays of affection. Easy enough, right? Except the moment Finn sat down beside me in nothing but swim trunks, sunglasses, and smug "I forgot how to breathe" or think, or lie convincingly. We passed the first few questions easily. Favorite food, pizza. Dream vacation, Santorini. Weirdest place we've made out. Finn said elevator, which was bold considering we'd only kissed once, and it wasn't in an elevator. But okay. Then came the PDA part. We were supposed to act natural in a chaise lounge while sipping mocktails and being disgustingly in love. Finn draped an arm around me, pulled me into his lap like it was nothing, and whispered in my ear, "You're blushing again, Allie." I wanted to tell him to shut up. Instead, I accidentally nuzzled his neck and made a sound I didn't know I was capable of. The camera crew probably got an Emmy just for capturing the sexual tension. It was hot, staged, pretend, probably. Until I noticed Finn's smile falter. It was just for a second, but his grip tightened, his body tensed, and when I followed his gaze I saw a man in a dark blazer watching us from across the pool. Finn's whole vibe shifted. Easygoing, gone. Flirtatious, evaporated. He leaned in, kissed my cheek, and said way too calmly, "I'll be right back." Then he walked toward the hotel, phone already in hand. I waited 5 minutes before curiosity, okay, paranoia won, and I followed. I found him in a quiet hallway near the spa, speaking low and fast into his phone. I only caught a few words. "She doesn't know anything. No, I'm handling it. Just let me get through this week." He turned and saw me. We froze. "Hey," he said, sliding his phone into his pocket. Voice cool as ever. "Needed a quick work call. You good?" I nodded too fast. Lied too easily. But something was wrong. I could feel it now. And as I followed him back into the sunlight and the faked honeymoon fantasy, all I could think was, what the hell did I just get myself into? If someone had told me I'd be rifling through my accidental husband's duffel bag before day 4 of our fake honeymoon, I would have told them, I'm not that girl. You know, the one snooping, second-guessing, spiral central. But here we are. Plot twist. I am exactly that girl. Because when your fake husband says things like, "She doesn't know anything" into a burner phone and then shrugs it off with a wink and a kiss, you don't just ignore it and go back to sipping virgin mojitos by the pool. You investigate. Like a woman with trust issues and a Pinterest board full of red flags. It started innocent. I was just grabbing sunscreen. That's all. But his bag was half sipped, and something inside caught my eye. Something metallic. I tugged it free and blinked. A passport. No big deal. Except the name on it wasn't Finn Wilder. It was Nathaniel Flynn. My heart did this fun little thing where it stopped beating. Was he running from something? Someone? Me? I shoved the passport back in and zipped it up just as the door opened. Finn strolled in, freshly showered, towel slung low on his hips, like he was personally trying to give me a heart attack. "Miss me?" he asked, totally oblivious to the identity crisis unraveling in his bag. And in my brain, I played it cool. "You were gone?" He gave me that look, the one that says, "I know what you're doing, and I'm going to enjoy every second of it." I was getting this. He held up a silky white box tied with a ribbon. "It's for tonight's challenge." He tossed it to me. Inside, lingerie, black, lace, dangerously minimal. My cheeks went full nuclear. "It's newlywed intimacy night," he said, grinning. "There's a spa dinner, a hot tub, and apparently a couple's photo shoot." He leaned in, voice low. "You in?" I wanted to throw the box at his perfect face. I wanted to demand who the hell Nathaniel Flynn was. I wanted to scream, but instead I nodded, because despite every rational bone in my body screaming run, I still wanted him. I still wanted to know him. I still wanted to know him. I still wanted to know him. And maybe that's the real danger here. Not the secrets, not the lies, but the fact that I already care, way more than I should. You'd think, slipping into black lace lingerie in a luxury hotel suite with mood lighting and a ridiculously hot fake husband would be sexy. And okay, fine. It was. But it was also dangerous, because while the spa smelled like lavender and seduction, and Finn looked like a Calvin Klein ad in his white button-down and undone bow tie, my mind was spinning with one very loud question: who the hell is Nathaniel Flynn? But I couldn't ask, not with 3 camera crews lurking just outside the spa, ready to capture every authentic moment of newlywed chemistry. The producers had set the scene: a private dinner for 2 beside a hot tub, candlelight flickering, rose petals floating in the water like this was The Bachelor, FBI edition. And Finn? He leaned into it like he was born for this. We sipped champagne, answered more couples trivia, laughed a little too easily, touched a little too often, and when the cameras finally packed up for the night, Finn turned to me, eyes hooded and dark. "You want to get in?" he asked, nodding to the hot tub. I should have said no. Instead, I slid in, water warm against my skin, his gaze warmer. He followed. Our knees brushed, then his hand. The kiss happened fast, hungry, like we were making up for every second we'd wasted pretending. His mouth was on mine, and my fingers were in his hair, and somewhere in the back of my mind I was screaming at myself to pull away because I didn't even know his real name. But then the sound of glass shattering snapped me out of it. We froze. I looked over his shoulder, and for a split second, just one, I saw a figure outside the spa window, shadowed, still, watching. Finn saw it too. He jumped out of the water like someone lit a fuse, grabbed a towel, and sprinted for the door without a word. I followed, heart racing, wrapping myself in silk and panic, but by the time we got there, whoever it was, they were gone. Finn stood there in silence, dripping water onto the marble floor, jaw clenched tight. "Probably just some drunk guest," he muttered. But his eyes said otherwise. They said he knew exactly who it was, and I knew right then. I wasn't the only one keeping secrets anymore. I woke up the next morning, to the soft knock of room service, and the heavy weight of reality pressing on my chest like a drunk elephant in stilettos. The events of the night before, hot tub steam, the kiss I couldn't stop thinking about, and the shadowy figure outside the spa, played on loop in my head like a twisted rom-com directed by Hitchcock. Finn was already up, wrapped in a towel, hair damp, scrolling his phone like he wasn't being stalked by a literal ghost from his past. He looked up when I groaned, gave me a too easy smile, and said, "You snore when you're stressed." "Do not come for me," I muttered, grabbing a robe and wondering if murder was a valid annulment reason. We opened the door to a silver breakfast cart, stacked high with croissants, coffee and champagne, and sitting neatly in the center, tucked between 2 linen napkins, was a folded note. No envelope, no name, just 4 words in thick red ink. "Do not trust him." I froze. Finn's jaw flexed. He grabbed the note before I could touch it, crumpled it, and tossed it in the trash like it was a parking ticket. "Probably some other couple messing with us," he said, too quickly. "These games get competitive." But I wasn't buying it anymore. "Who was watching us last night, Finn?" I asked, voice low. "And don't give me some drunk guest crap. You knew them. I saw your face." He sighed, ran a hand through his hair, and looked at me, really looked. Something in his expression cracked. The charm faded. The lies dimmed. "Ali," he started. Knock, knock, knock. Another interruption. Because of course, at the door stood the clipboard-wielding hotel coordinator with a grin too wide for that hour of the morning. "Ready for today's surprise challenge?" she beamed. Finn glanced at me. "We'll be down in 10. I didn't move. Neither did he. But as the door clicked shut again, he stepped closer, eyes dark. "I'll tell you everything. Tonight. I promise." And for one terrifying second, I believed him. But the note was still in the trash, and the words were still burning in my brain. Do not trust him. And suddenly, I wasn't sure I did. The day's surprise challenge was called Letters of Love. Cute, right? Except it wasn't. Not even close. The rules were simple. Write your spouse a heartfelt letter, read it aloud to the group that evening, and let the judges, aka a trio of couples therapists and one very tan travel influencer, score you on authenticity and emotional depth. Romantic? Supposedly. Terrifying? Absolutely. Especially when your husband might not be who he says he is, and you're 99% sure you're one missed text away from starring in your own true crime documentary. Finn, of course, took it in stride. You love writing lists, he teased, pulling me into his lap in our suite, like we weren't sitting on a pile of secrets. Just pretend it's a list of all the reasons you want me. I almost choked on my mimosa. Bold of you to assume I'd make that list. He winked. You already did. With your mouth. Last night. I hated that he wasn't wrong. I hated more that I still wanted to kiss him. Even now. Even while knowing something. Everything was off. He said he'd tell me everything tonight. But tonight felt like a lifetime away. So when he went into the shower, leaving his phone on the table, unlocked, I did what any woman with half a brain and a full tank of anxiety would do. I looked. No passcode. No hesitation. Like he trusted me. Which made me feel worse. And then I saw it. A folder in his photo gallery labeled F. I tapped it. My heart stopped. Photo after photo of a woman. Dark hair. Pretty. Laughing in some. Crying in others. Some looked old. Some. Very recent. A few screenshots of news articles too. One was titled, "Local Heiress Disappears. Foul Play Suspected." Her name was Felicity Kane. And then I saw one picture that nearly made me drop the phone. Felicity. In this hotel. From 2 nights ago. She was here. Or had been. I dropped the phone on the couch just as Finn walked out. Towel low on his hips. Hair wet. And that same damn smirk. But I couldn't see it the same way anymore. You okay? He asked. Like he wasn't hiding a missing woman on his phone. I smiled. It felt sharp. Peachy. And in that moment, I knew 3 things. Felicity Kane was real. Finn, Nathaniel knew her. And whatever he was planning with me, it had just changed. I always thought the most humiliating thing I'd ever do in public was cry during the notebook at a 3rd grade birthday party. But no. Turns out, my top spot now goes to reading a love letter to my maybe-not husband in front of a panel of marriage counselors, 2 influencers, and a suspiciously intense couple from Miami who kept whispering about true connection like it was a blood pact. We were seated in the hotel ballroom under twinkle lights, surrounded by tables for 10 faux rose petals, and a DJ spinning instrumental Ed Sheeran like we were one speech away from a wedding reception. I sat next to Finn, smiling through gritted teeth while secretly plotting to burn his phone and maybe his passport. But of course, he looked unbothered. Loose button down, sleeves rolled up, gold chain peeking out. Like he wasn't hiding a secret identity and a photo archive of a missing woman. He leaned in before we started. His voice a low purr. You look like you want to kill me. Only a little, I replied, smiling sweetly. Depending on how good your letter is. They called our names third, right after a couple that had apparently met on a goat yoga retreat in Sedona and cried the whole time. I went first. My voice trembled for the first 2 lines, but then I found a rhythm. I made it sound sweet, silly, believable. I mentioned how Finn always knew when I needed coffee, how his eyes were warm even when he was being infuriating, how sometimes pretending didn't feel like pretending anymore, and somehow, I wasn't just faking it. I was telling the truth. The judges clapped. The influencer dabbed her eyes. Then Finn stood, and for a second, I swear, I saw his mask crack. He held a folded paper in his hand but didn't read it. Just looked around the room like he was weighing the risk of saying something he wasn't supposed to. Then finally, he began. Allie Carter is the worst decision I ever made, and the best thing that ever happened to me. The room went still. She's chaos in red lipstick. She talks too much when she's nervous, and always double knots her sneakers. She makes lists she never finishes, and sleeps curled on the very edge of the bed like she's afraid of taking up too much space. And I'm the guy who doesn't deserve her. My heart did that dumb hopeful thing, fluttering where it should have stayed hard. So I don't know if this is real, or if it ever was, but I know that when this week ends I'm going to miss her. Silence, then applause, soft, moved, manipulated. But I saw it, right at the back of the room, a woman, standing alone, watching him, and he saw her too. His eyes locked with hers, just for a second. His entire body went rigid, and I knew, that woman, was Felicity Kane, and she wasn't missing anymore. She was here, and everything was about to blow wide open. Felicity Kane didn't make a scene. She didn't scream or throw a drink or slap Finn across the face, which, honestly, was kind of disappointing because I had popcorn-level anticipation for that kind of drama. She waited until the ballroom cleared, until the last couple awkwardly shuffled away and the DJ started packing up his tiny LED light setup. Then she walked right up to us like she belonged in the room. Like her reappearance wasn't about to rip the sky open. She looked untouchable. White linen pantsuit, barefaced, but somehow still glowing. Cool, composed, and terrifyingly calm. Like a ghost who'd had time to rehearse her return from the dead. "Ali, right?" she said, smiling like we were old brunch friends instead of co-stars in the world's messiest thriller. "Can I borrow your husband for a second?" I didn't move, neither did Finn. "I think you should sit down," she said, eyes on me now, "because you're about to hear a version of your new husband that doesn't come with cocktails and charm." Finn exhaled, loud, slow, resigned. "You're not going to let me explain first?" he asked her. "You had your chance," she said. "Now it's her turn to know the truth." And God help me, I sat down. Turns out, Finn Wilder wasn't a con artist. Not exactly. His real name, Nathaniel Flynn, was legit. So was his past. But what wasn't? His reason for being in Vegas. He was supposed to find me, Felicity said. Not marry you. Cue the emotional gut punch. She explained everything in that same chillingly calm tone. She and Nathaniel had grown up together. Next-door neighbors. Childhood friends. Something more. She was the youngest daughter of a very rich, very shady family who tried to force her into a marriage to solidify some kind of elite business merger. So she disappeared, faked a breakdown, hid, and Nathaniel was hired by her family to track her down, quietly. No police, no public drama. Just find her, and bring her home. He found me, she said, crossing her arms. But then he met you, and suddenly it all made sense. The secrecy, the fake name, the photos, the note. Don't trust him. Did you even like me? I asked him, voice cracking. Or was I just a great alibi? Finn, Nathaniel, whatever his damn name was, looked at me, and for the first time, his expression wasn't charming or smirking or cocky. It was wrecked. You weren't part of the plan, he said. You were the reason I stopped following it. And that's when I walked out, because I'd made one reckless decision in Vegas. But falling for a liar with dimples and emotional baggage, that was the one that might just break me. I told myself I was walking away. I meant it when I stormed out of the ballroom. Cheeks flushed with betrayal and mascara, probably smeared into full raccoon territory. I meant it when I got in the elevator, hit the button for my floor, and swore under my breath that I was done being the girl who fell for the guy with too many names and not enough truth. But then there was a knock at my door, and I opened it. Of course I did. Because there he was, Finn, Nathaniel, whatever, standing in the hallway like every terrible decision I still wanted to make, hair a mess, shirt wrinkled, eyes dark with something between guilt and desperation. And the moment I looked at him, I knew I wasn't done. I didn't come here to defend myself, he said, voice rough. I came to say I'm sorry, and that I wanted to walk away the second I met you, but I couldn't. You should have, I whispered. You really should have. I know, his voice cracked. But I didn't. And I never will. There was a silence between us then, thick, heavy, charged, and maybe it was the emotional whiplash. Or maybe it was the ache that had been building since the moment I kissed him under fake stars and whispered real things I hadn't meant to say. But I didn't push him away. I pulled him in. The door shut behind us. Our mouths crashed like we were starving for it. Clothes hit the floor in a mess of silk, buttons, and tension unraveling thread by thread. He kissed me like he needed forgiveness. I kissed him like I needed to forget. He laid me back on the bed with a reverence that broke me more than his lies ever could. His hands, those damn hands, knew my body better than they had any right to. I arched under him, gasped his name, and for that one night we didn't talk about Felicity, or secrets, or why we never should have ended up here. We just were, breathless, tangled, real. Later, when we were both wrecked and quiet in the dark, his hand found mine beneath the sheets. You still don't trust me, he whispered. No, I breathed. But I still want you, and that was the most honest thing I'd said all day. Morning came too soon. Wrapped in golden light, and too much truth. I woke up with Finn's arms slung over my waist, his chest warm against my back, and a headache that had nothing to do with alcohol. The ache wasn't in my head, it was in my heart, because everything still hurt. And yet, I still wanted him close. He stirred as I slipped out of bed, sheets falling low on his hips. That infuriatingly beautiful man blinking up at me like we hadn't crossed 1,000 lines the night before. "Leaving so soon, wife?" he rasped. "Don't," I warned softly, slipping on the hotel robe. "Don't pretend we're fine." He nodded once. No smirk, no sarcasm, just quiet understanding, because today was the final day of the contest, and we were supposed to be celebrating newlywed bliss with champagne toasts and goodbye interviews. Meanwhile, I was wondering if the man I just slept with was going to vanish the second it was over, or worse, if someone else was going to make him. The morning went on in a blur, smiling for cameras, answering staged questions about our future, like we hadn't just made love with lies still between us. Finn played his part. So did I, but every time his fingers brushed mine, I flinched a little less, and hated myself for it. Then came the final event. One last dinner, one last toast, one last chance to charm the judges. Everyone was dressed to the nines. Finn wore a black suit that should have been illegal. I wore red, bold, sharp, and just angry enough to remind him I hadn't forgotten who he was. We were seated under twinkle lights in the rooftop garden. Champagne flowed, laughter filled the air, and for a moment it all felt almost normal, until I saw him. The man from the spa. The shadow from that night, the one watching us through the glass. He was across the rooftop, standing at the bar, wearing a sharp gray suit and sunglasses even though the sun had long set. He wasn't blending in, he wasn't trying to. He was watching Finn, and Finn saw him too. I felt Finn's whole body shift. He leaned toward me and murmured, "Don't look, but we need to leave." I looked anyway. The man raised his glass, smiled, and then he started walking toward us. Finn stood up fast, gripping my hand. "Come on, what the hell is going on?" I hissed, panic flooding in. "His name's Roman," Finn muttered. "And if he's here, it's not about Felicity anymore, it's about me." I didn't get a chance to ask more, because Roman reached our table, smile still intact, voice smooth as sin. "Evening, Nathaniel. Lovely party. Shame if it turned into a crime scene." And just like that, the game was over. The moment Roman said crime scene, I stopped breathing. It wasn't just a threat. It was a promise wrapped in silk and delivered with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Finn, no." Nathaniel stood frozen beside me, jaw tight, hand gripping mine like a lifeline. I had questions, too many. But right now, we needed out. He didn't wait. Just pulled me away from the table with a mumbled "excuse us" that no one bought. I caught one last glimpse of Roman, sipping his champagne like he owned the damn night, watching us leave like a predator already counting the steps. We reached the suite and Finn locked the door behind us, breathing like he'd run a marathon and lost every step. "Talk," I said. "Now." He turned to me, eyes darker than I'd ever seen them. "Roman works for people I used to be involved with," he said. "Not legally, not clean." It was before I knew how far it went. I stared at him. "What kind of people?" He hesitated. "Money laundering, identity stuff. Nothing violent. Not at first, but it got worse. They used my face, my name Nathaniel Flynn, on paper, in deals. I didn't know until I was in too deep." "Are you saying?" I choked on the words. "You're a criminal?" I was. His voice cracked. "But I left. Years ago. I burned it all down, walked away. I changed my name. I disappeared. Until what? Until I got a call that Felicity was in trouble. I owed her, more than anyone. I thought if I found her, brought her back to her family, I'd be free. I didn't plan on meeting you. I didn't plan on falling for you." Silence. Sharp. Final. Terrifying. "So this whole week, this fake marriage, the contest, the kisses." He stepped toward me. "That wasn't fake. Your name was fake. My feelings weren't." I shook my head, heart splitting like wet wood. "And now Roman's here to what? Kill you? Take you back? Blackmail you?" All of the above, he said softly. Then and if he knows about you, you're not safe either. The room spun. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I didn't want you to run. Too late. I turned away from him. Tears burning, fury boiling. My fake husband was a fugitive. A liar. A man with a target on his back and a past wrapped in criminal records. And I'd fallen in love with him anyway. Here's a fun little thing they never tell you about falling for a man with a fake name and a criminal past. It's all fun and games until he disappears without a trace. 1 second, Finn, Nathaniel, whatever, was in our suite, pacing the carpet, talking about escape plans and burner phones and where we could go after this was all over. And the next, I woke up alone. No note, no call, no goodbye, just an empty bed, a drawer left half open, and the sick realization that maybe I'd finally pushed him too far. Or worse, maybe Roman had pulled him back in. I called his name. Nothing. Texted. Nothing. The concierge said he checked out at 5:42 a.m. checked, like I was just a chapter he'd closed. My stomach twisted. My hands were shaking, but my brain kicked into overdrive. I tore the suite apart, looked for clues, and in the pocket of the jacket he wore last night, I found something, a key card to a different room, 1 floor down. A different name, a different alias. I followed it. I had to. Room 1807 was empty, cleared out. But someone had been there, recently. I could still smell Finn's cologne. Still feel the heat in the room. And on the desk, 1 photograph. Felicity. But not alone. Me and Finn were in the background at the spa, the hot tub night. Someone had been watching, tracking. It wasn't just Roman. There were more. And suddenly I realized, this wasn't just about finding Felicity. This was about eliminating anyone who knew too much, including me. And if Finn was gone, he either ran to protect me, or he was taken. But here's the thing about Allie Carter. I might be a mess in stilettos and lace, but when someone I love vanishes into a storm of secrets and danger, I don't sit still. I burn it down. Let me start by saying, I'm not the kick down doors, spy on bad guys type. I don't do danger. I do spreadsheets, and carry extra floss in my purse. I'm a good girl, remember? At least I was. But then again, I also wasn't the kind of girl who marries a man with a fake name, survives a honeymoon filled with spies and lies, or falls for a fugitive with bedroom eyes and a very inconvenient conscience. So, yeah, that version of me, dead. I started with the surveillance photo. I recognized the angled top of the hotel's back stairwell, which meant someone had access to security zones. Staff, maybe. Or someone who'd paid off staff. Either way, I wasn't waiting for Finn to come save me. If he was still breathing, I was going to be the one to find him. Step 1. I went to Roman's room. Don't ask me how I got the number. Let's just say my new best friend in housekeeping has a soft spot for girls in tears and a $100 bill. I knocked. No answer. So I picked the lock. Yes, picked the lock. Turns out, YouTube is a magical, unhinged place when you're panicking at 2 a.m. and hate feeling helpless. Inside, the room was spotless. Too spotless. Like it had been cleaned by someone trying to erase something. But they missed one thing. A laptop bag. Inside, burner phone, passport, a notebook full of names and numbers, and under the flap, a photo of me. Just me. My heart slammed into my ribs. Underneath it, scrawled in thick black ink, leverage. I nearly dropped it. My mouth went dry. I wasn't just a complication in Finn's story. I was a target. And whatever plan Roman had, it wasn't just about revenge. It was about using me to get to Finn. I ran back to the suite, locked the door, checked every window, sat shaking in the middle of the bed with a million thoughts spiraling, and then my phone buzzed. Unknown number, no text, just a photo. Finn, tied to a chair, blood at the corner of his mouth. Caption, come alone. There are 2 kinds of girls in stories like this. The ones who run crying into the night, and the ones who show up in heels with blood in their teeth. Guess which one I decided to be. I stared at the photo of Finn, tied up, beaten, and still somehow managing to smirk through the blood, and felt something in me crack. I wasn't scared anymore. I was furious. No one gets to hurt the man I love, not even the man I don't trust. The message said, come alone, bring the key. One problem, I had no idea what the key was. So I did what any rational woman would do. Ransacked Finn's things like I was raiding a spy's closet. And buried in the lining of the duffel he'd left behind, a USB. Tiny, unlabeled, ice cold in my palm. Gotcha. I dressed in black, wrote a note to no one, left everything behind except the USB and a switchblade I didn't know I owned until I tore apart the minibar drawer. Apparently Finn's paranoia came with perks. The location? An abandoned banquet hall just off the strip. Classic villain vibes, dusty chandeliers, broken mirrors, and the kind of darkness that feels like it's watching you back. Roman was waiting. 3 men flanked him, big, silent, armed, and in the center, tied to a chair with bruised ribs and that same damn stubborn fire in his eyes. Finn. Our eyes met across the room. He looked like hell, and still, he smiled when he saw me. "Ali," he said, like a prayer, or a warning. I held up the USB. "Let him go." Roman stepped forward, slow. "You really think this ends with a trade, sweetheart?" "No," I said. "I think it ends with me burning this little drive and every last file on it unless you let him go right now." His smile dropped. His eyes flared. "Bingo. Hand it over," he growled. "I want proof he walks away alive." Roman signaled one of his men to untie Finn. He staggered, but stood. Barely. But he was breathing. That was all I needed. I stepped forward with the drive. Close enough to see the cut above Finn's eye, the split in his lip, close enough to want to kill Roman myself. And then, I dropped the USB, right into a glass of cheap champagne. "Oops," I said sweetly. "Guess I'll just have to upload the backup." Chaos. Roman lunged, and that's when Finn moved, elbowing one guard, grabbing my arm, and shoving us both through the nearest exit while bullets tore into the air behind us. We ran, bleeding, breathless, alive. We made it to the alley, fell against the wall, and then he kissed me. Like he wasn't bleeding, like we weren't running, like this was the only moment left. "Remind me to never piss you off," he breathed. I laughed, half hysterical. "You already did." We didn't stop running. Not until we reached the edge of the city, ducking into a seedy roadside motel that smelled like bleach and bad decisions. Finn was bleeding, limping, and leaning hard on adrenaline and sheer spite, but alive. That should have been enough. It wasn't. I patched him up in the bathroom while he hissed and tried to flirt between winces. "You've got surprisingly gentle hands for someone who threatened to murder me with a champagne flute." "I didn't threaten," I said. Dabbing a gash on his temple, I implied. He smiled. I didn't. Because the high was fading, and I still had questions. "What was on that USB?" I asked. He didn't answer at first, just stared at me with something between guilt and dread. "Ali," he started. "No," I snapped. "No more half-truths. No more I'll explain laters. That drive was important enough for Roman to threaten to kill both of us. I want the truth." Finally, he gave it to me. The USB wasn't just about Felicity. It had records, financials, identities. A full list of people involved in the Kane family's offshore laundering network, Roman included. It's evidence that could put a lot of people away. I blinked. "And you were just carrying it around." I was going to trade it to get Felicity out, not give it back to her family. Just disappear with it. Use it as leverage. But then I met you. And the whole plan, he paused, changed. My mind was spinning. "You weren't running from them," I whispered. "You were negotiating with them. I was protecting you." "No, Finn," I said, standing. "You were protecting yourself. I was just your favorite bonus complication." The words were venom. They hurt to say, but not as much as what came next. Because Finn stood, walked to his duffel bag and pulled something else out. Another USB. My blood turned to ice. "You really think I'd only have one?" he said softly. "That wasn't the original. It was a decoy. The real one's encrypted, hidden. But it's useless now." "Why?" He looked up at me, and the world cracked. "Because you're on it." The room spun. "What?" "Not as a criminal," he said quickly. "But, you were tagged. Your name. Your photo. As collateral. Roman's insurance. in case anyone close to me needed to be silenced. I staggered back. So I've been in this from the beginning? I didn't know at first. I swear. But it didn't matter anymore. Because now I wasn't just part of the story. I was a target in it. We didn't sleep. Who could, when the walls felt too thin and the world outside felt like it was holding its breath, waiting to lunge? Finn paced the motel room like a man trying not to shatter. I sat on the bed staring at the USB drive in my hand. The real one, the one with my name on it. The one that proved I was a pawn in someone's sick little criminal chess game, dragged into a war I didn't start, and now couldn't escape. "You should go," Finn said, breaking the silence, voice hoarse. "Get a flight out. Disappear. I'll draw them away. You were never supposed to be part of this." "Yeah, well," I muttered, eyes locked on the tiny piece of metal that held more danger than dynamite. "Maybe we don't always get what we're supposed to be." He turned to me, jaw clenched. "You don't understand." "No," I snapped, standing. "You don't. I'm not running, Finn. I'm not leaving you, and I'm sure as hell not letting this end with me looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life." Before he could argue again, my burner phone buzzed. Blocked number. Another message. One sentence. "You have something that belongs to me. Let's trade." Attached was a photo. Felicity, hands tied, duct tape over her mouth, eyes wide, alive, barely. Finn paled. She was supposed to be gone, hidden. I set her up with new papers. "Someone found her," I whispered. "Roman." Of course it was Roman. The message had a location, a timestamp. Tonight, we didn't have time to think. We packed fast. The USB, a burner, Finn's backup gun, which I slid into my coat pocket like it was a normal thing for me now. And somehow, it was. The meeting point was an empty parking garage downtown. Classic thriller setup. Echoes, concrete, flickering lights. One exit, no backup. We arrived early, too early. And then, like ghosts from a fever dream, they appeared. Roman, two men in suits, and Felicity. She looked worse than the photo. Pale, shaking, blood at her temple. And when Roman smiled, it was the kind of smile that made your bones want to crawl out of your skin. "Finn," he said smoothly, "you've been very disobedient. Let her go." Finn growled. "You'll get the drive." Roman raised a brow. "You're not in the position to make demands." He turned to me. "And you," he said, "you're smarter than I gave you credit for." "Thanks," I said. "You're slimier than I gave you credit for." He laughed. "Give me the drive, and I might let one of you walk away." I stepped forward, slowly, pulled the USB from my pocket. Catch, and I threw it over his head. It clattered behind him. In that split second of chaos, everyone's eyes on the drive, Felicity moved. She elbowed the guard beside her, kicked backward, and suddenly everything exploded, yelling, gunfire. Finn dove for me. I hit the ground hard. My ears rang, and when I looked up, Roman was pointing his gun at Finn. Without thinking, I grabbed the one in my coat. My hands shook, my breath caught, and I pulled the trigger. Once, twice, Roman dropped. Everything stopped. Silence, and I realized I wasn't just a complication anymore. I was the one who ended it. The police came at dawn. Someone, probably a security guard with half a conscience, called in the gunshots, and by the time the blood was dry on the concrete, there were sirens echoing through the city and flashing red lights bouncing off every broken piece of me. Roman was dead. Felicity was alive. And me, I was somewhere in between. They questioned us separately. Felicity, bruised but breathing, told them she'd been kidnapped and I'd saved her. Finn's story matched. Mine? Well, let's just say the truth gets blurry when adrenaline's still spiking and your hands won't stop shaking. The cops took my gun, my statement, and thankfully, my side. The shooting was ruled self-defense. No charges. But no one talks about the other kind of punishment. The kind where you replay the moment over and over, wondering who you became the second you chose to survive. Later in the motel, Finn wrapped me in a blanket and didn't say a word. Just sat beside me while I stared at the floor like it might offer answers, or comfort, or a version of myself I recognized. "I didn't think I could do it," I whispered. "Eventually, pull the trigger." You didn't have a choice. I looked at him. Really looked. You always say that, I said. Like we're all just reacting. Surviving. Running. Aren't we? I leaned back, let the silence stretch. I don't want to run anymore, Finn. He turned to me. His eyes looked exhausted, haunted, still impossibly tender. You want to leave me? No, I said. I want to stop pretending this isn't real. His breath hitched, just a little. I want to stop being someone's weapon, someone's excuse, someone's leverage. I want to be someone's choice. He reached out then, brushed his knuckles down my cheek. You are, he said. You've been mine since the moment I saw you. I just didn't know it yet. We kissed, soft this time. No heat, no rush, just home. And in that quiet, broken motel room, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I believed him. But we both knew this wasn't over. Roman was dead, but the people he worked for, they were still out there, and if they came for us next, I wouldn't be the same girl waiting to be saved. I'd be the one who fought back. We left Vegas the next morning. Not with a bang, not in a blaze of glory, just quietly, like shadows slipping through the cracks of a city that never cared who you were as long as you tipped well. Felicity was escorted to a secure location by people she trusted. Reed hired, promising she was done running. She hugged me once, tight, like we'd survived a war only we knew existed. And maybe we had. Finn and I hit the road before noon, driving in silence with the USB in my bag and the weight of everything unspoken between us. He glanced at me once, just past the Nevada border, and said, "We could disappear. For real this time. A cabin in Colorado, new names, blank slates." It was tempting. So tempting. But I didn't want blank. I wanted truth. I wanted us, mess and danger and all. "Are you done running?" I asked him, fingers twisting in my lap. He paused, then nodded. "I don't want to hide anymore." "Then let's finish this." He looked at me like I'd just handed him his own heartbeat. "We exposed them," I said. "The Kane family, Roman's contacts, everyone on that drive. We don't burn it, we use it." He shook his head. "They'll come for us. They already did." He pulled the car over, just stopped, right there on the side of the empty road. Then he turned to me and said, "If we do this, there's no turning back. No more fake names, no more safe houses, just war." I leaned in, kissed him, slow and deep, until he forgot how to breathe. "Then let's go to war." And just like that, the girl who used to live for neat plans and safe choices was gone. Allie Carter, the accidental wife, the girl who once color-coded her closet, was about to bring down a criminal empire, with her gunmetal heart. And the man who ruined her life, just enough to make her finally start living. We didn't sleep the night before we exposed them. There was too much at stake. Too many moving pieces. Too many ways this could all go to hell and take us with it. But as we sat on the floor of a cheap motel in Arizona, laptops open, burner phones ready, USB drive glowing like a loaded weapon between us, I didn't feel afraid. I felt ready. We'd spent 3 days building the plan. Anonymous leaks to every major investigative journalist. Files encrypted, scheduled to release across global servers. Safety nets on safety nets. If they tried to silence us, the story would still break. The kind of story that ends careers, destroys dynasties, puts people like the Kanes behind bars. We hit send at 8 a.m. By 8:12 it was trending. And by 8:30, we weren't just ghosts with secrets. We were targets with names. The media exploded. Felicity's face was on every screen. The Kane family was forced into hiding. Arrest warrants started flying. Offshore accounts froze. The world started turning the way it should have all along. And Finn? Finn looked at me like I'd handed him his redemption and kissed it into his mouth. "I love you," he said. Somewhere between the fallout and the firestorm. "I know," I whispered, holding his hand like it was my anchor. "I love me too," he laughed. Pulled me in. "Smart ass. You're smart ass." We were planning to disappear again. For good this time. No more running. Just peace. Maybe a sleepy coastal town. A dog. A porch. A life. But life? It had one last twist left for us. Because just as we were walking to the car, ready to vanish into that hypothetical sunset, A black SUV pulled into the lot. I tensed. So did Finn. The door opened, and out stepped Felicity, hair pulled back, face calm. No bruises, no fear. She walked right up to me and handed me a flash drive. "What's this?" I asked. "Insurance," she said. "The Canes had a second network. One even your little data drop didn't touch. I found it, and I want you to be the one to burn it down." I blinked. "Why me?" She smiled. "Because you're not the girl who got dragged into this anymore. You're the girl who chose to stay. And that makes you dangerous." And then she was gone, and we were left, standing on the edge of peace, with one more storm in our hands. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Because I had Finn, I had purpose, and I had a war to finish.